The German military had a long and distinguished history. Prussian generals had defeated the French. German commanders had mastered the art of maneuver warfare. The German general staff was considered the finest in the world. German officers studied military history and theory. They understood tactics. They understood strategy. They understood how to win battles. But there was something that they did not understand. They did not understand how to fight America. The German approach to warfare was based on the concept of blitzkrieg. Lightning war. The idea was to concentrate overwhelming force at a single point, to break through the enemy's defenses, and to exploit the breakthrough by moving rapidly into the enemy's rear areas. This strategy had worked brilliantly against Poland, against France, and against the Soviet Union. It was based on the principle of speed and surprise. It was based on the principle of achieving a decisive victory before the enemy could mobilize their full resources. But this strategy had a fatal flaw when applied to America. America had resources that seemed almost unlimited. America had an industrial capacity that could replace any losses. America had a population that could provide an endless supply of soldiers. America had a geographic position that made it almost impossible to invade. The German strategy of seeking a quick, decisive victory could not work against an enemy that had no need to seek a quick victory. The American approach to warfare was fundamentally different. Americans did not believe in seeking a quick, decisive victory. Americans believed in winning through attrition. Americans believed in using superior resources to overwhelm the enemy. Americans believed in a war of production, a war in which the side that could produce more weapons, more ammunition, more supplies, and more soldiers would inevitably win. This was not a new idea. The American Civil War had been a war of attrition. The Union had won not because it had better generals or better tactics, but because it had more resources. The Union had more factories, more railroads, and more soldiers. The Union could afford to lose battles and still win the war. The Confederacy could not. German generals studied the American Civil War. They understood the principle of attrition. But they believed that modern warfare was different. They believed that the speed of modern mechanized warfare meant that the war would be decided quickly. They believed that a nation that could move fast enough and strike hard enough could win before the enemy's superior resources could come into play. They were wrong. Modern warfare, as practiced by America, was not about speed and surprise. It was about logistics and production. It was about the ability to move vast quantities of supplies to the front lines. It was about the ability to replace losses faster than the enemy could inflict them. It was about the ability to sustain a war of attrition indefinitely. The German High Command did not understand American logistics. They did not understand how American trucks could move supplies across vast distances. They did not understand how American ports could unload cargo at such enormous rates. They did not understand how American factories could produce weapons at such incredible speeds. They assumed that American logistics would break down under the strain of supplying an army fighting in Europe. They assumed that the American supply lines would be vulnerable to German attack. They assumed that the Americans would eventually run out of supplies. They were wrong on all counts. American logistics did not break down. American supply lines were not vulnerable. American supplies seemed to be inexhaustible. The Germans would later study captured American supply charts and realize that they had catastrophically underestimated American industrial capacity. There was another aspect of American warfare that the Germans did not understand. The Germans believed in centralized command. Orders came from above. Soldiers executed orders. There was little room for initiative at lower levels. The German army was a machine, and the soldiers were the parts of that machine. The American army was different. American sergeants had the authority to make decisions in the field. American squad leaders could adapt tactics to changing circumstances. American soldiers were encouraged to think for themselves. This meant that American units could adapt more quickly to changing conditions. American units could exploit opportunities more rapidly. American units could recover from setbacks more effectively. The Germans called this American approach undisciplined. They believed that American soldiers lacked the training and discipline of German soldiers. They believed that American units would fall apart when faced with determined German resistance. But they were wrong. American soldiers were highly trained. American units were highly disciplined. But they had a different kind of discipline. They had the discipline that comes from understanding why they are fighting, not just from following orders. There was also the matter of American artillery. German generals did not fully appreciate the power of American artillery. The German army had excellent artillery pieces. But the American army had more artillery pieces, and they used them more effectively. The Americans had developed a technique called time on target. Multiple artillery batteries would fire at the same target at the same time, creating a devastating concentration of firepower. The Germans had nothing comparable. German artillery was used to support specific operations. American artillery was used to dominate the battlefield. American artillery was used to suppress enemy positions. American artillery was used to soften up enemy defenses before an infantry assault. The Germans would later realize that American artillery superiority had been one of the decisive factors in the defeat. There was also the matter of air power. The Germans understood that air superiority was important, but they did not fully appreciate the extent to which American air power could dominate the battlefield. American fighter bombers could attack German positions with impunity. American bombers could destroy German factories and cities. American air power was not just a tactical advantage. It was a strategic advantage that shaped the entire course of the war. The Germans had developed the V-1 and V-2 weapons as a response to American air superiority. These were weapons of desperation. They were designed to terrorize the British population and to disrupt American war production. But they came too late and in too small numbers to make any difference. By 1944, the German High Command had begun to realize that they had fundamentally misunderstood American warfare. They had believed that American soldiers were soft and undisciplined. They had believed that American logistics would break down. They had believed that American industry could not sustain a long war. They had believed that a quick, decisive victory was possible. But none of these beliefs were correct. American soldiers were tough and disciplined. American logistics were robust and efficient. American industry was producing weapons at incredible rates. And America was willing to fight a long war of attrition. America was willing to accept casualties. America was willing to sacrifice. America was willing to do whatever it took to win. This was a form of warfare that the German High Command did not understand. This was a form of warfare that they could not defeat, and by the time they realized this, it was too late. The war was already lost.
This is one of the wars that changed the world.